Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and man, I know I must sound like a broken record in these intros, because my life revolves around what's happening to my wife right now. And when I'm not focused on what she's going through, I'm selling stickers for diecutstickers.com and I'm doing podcasts. My days go from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and as you can imagine, I'm starting to lose my mind. I mean, first and foremost, it is so sad to see what my wife has gone through over the past 3 years. And 2025 has been by far the worst of it. It's not even close. The pain and suffering is at an all-time high. And if you've ever watched a loved one in excruciating pain 24/7, you know what we're living with. It's been really hard on my son, myself, and I can't imagine all the things that go through Ange's head. I mean, starting at 40, she started to have things taken away from her one by one. And now at 42, there's not much left to look forward to. While I've always believed that there's a God up there, all of this really has me questioning that belief. I mean, how do you explain things like cancer, Hitler, serial killers? I could get political here, but I won't. I mean, there's so much bad shit that happens in this world, and I keep thinking a good God wouldn't do this to people. But here we are, and I don't know what to believe anymore. That's my rant. A lot of you have been asking how you can help with what's going on in our family, and the answer is the GoFundMe. While we're not doing a meal train or anything like that because there is a lot of coordination and a lot of time that goes into that, the GoFundMe is the place where you can help our family. We don't expect everyone to do it by any means, but if you do, thank you very much. If you share, thank you very much. And if you don't, thank you very much as well. I mean, I know that you're thinking about us and caring about us, and that's really all that matters. I will say the GoFundMe really helps us feel the love through this tough time. But now it's time to share the love with a dude who's all about the love of inline skating, and he has an incredible story. Cameron Talbott didn't grow up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He had a challenging childhood in Montana, but Cameron's story of making it to the pro level of skating is more an incredible human story of a person with a passion for a sport that never wavered until he finally made it to the highest level. This is a great one that's not all smiles. And before we get into it, I want to thank you for listening each week. I want to ask you to tell a friend about the show, because if you like what I'm doing, I have a feeling your friends are going to like it too. So telling them about the show lets them know that I exist and they can hear all of my episodes. Finally, please support the incredible brands that make this podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Liquid Force, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Now, let's talk with Cameron Talbott.
What's going on?
Not too much, man. How you doing?
Not bad. Yeah. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm not doing all right, but we're not going to talk about how I'm doing because you don't need to know and it'll ruin the whole interview if I tell you how I'm doing. So I won't tell you.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But we will just jump right into it because that's how I like to roll. And there's a rumor floating around that you're related to the Marlboro Man. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, like my grandfather on my dad's side did some modeling for Marlboro and was, I guess, technically like a Marlboro Man in one of the ads, but he's not like by any means the official or like the main Marlboro Man. I think there have been many over the years, but yeah, he did some modeling for Marlboro, and one of them was the classic cowboy smoking a cigarette.
Nice. Well, that rumor is true, and that's pretty cool. You were born in San Francisco, but you grew up in Missoula, Montana. And being that this is a snow-focused podcast and you grew up 20 minutes from Montana Snow Bowl, did you ski or snowboard at all growing up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up riding snowball, and there was also another mountain called Marshall Mountain. It's kind of more of a mom and pop mountain. And that's actually the mountain I learned on. There was a after-school program when I was in elementary school that I think they took us up like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And yeah, I learned to ride on that mountain, Marshall Mountain.
Oh, sick. So it's like every kid there gets exposed to snow sports just because your school does that.
I mean, obviously the mountain's shut down now, and I don't know if Snowball offers that. But yeah, at the time, that was a thing. And yeah, it was super cool. They provided all the gear, and it was really, really cool to have that as an option.
Because, I mean, we're going to get into it in a little bit, but it wasn't like you were in that fortunate position that a lot of skiers and snowboarders are in to have like the ability family-wise to just go skiing every weekend. So the school really created that opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And Marshall being, it was only one chairlift, a rope tow, and a T-bar. So it was pretty cheap for the most part. And I went to school with Lance, the kid whose folks owned the place. So got a lot of free Mountain Dew and got a couple passes hooked up here and there. So that helped a lot as well.
Nice. Well, you're a pro skater today, and to make it where you did, you have to have some decent genes. And were your mom and dad decent athletes when they were younger?
My mom, I know, was into like cross country skiing and running and stuff.
Like fitness stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom was just always like pretty on the go and outdoorsy when I was younger, just hiking and camping, and I just loved being outside. And then my dad, I didn't grow up with my dad, so I'm not too familiar with his story. From what I've heard from other family members, he was pretty athletic and into basketball, and yeah, so he was on the go from what I gathered from other family members.
Yeah, so you're born in the Bay and it's your mom, dad, and older brother, but that ends really quickly. It sounds like you don't remember any of it. Was it divorced? Does your dad take off? How did that go?
Oh man, yeah, my dad and my mom split before I was born, so he just wasn't really around from the get-go.
When the split happens, it seems like it was you and your mom growing up in Montana. So did your older brother and your dad like have a totally separate life that you were never really part of?
It's kind of crazy. I actually have three brothers. I have an older brother and two younger brothers. My older brother, we share the same dad, different moms. He didn't really grow up with him either. My second youngest brother, Brett, grew up with my dad, my biological dad, here in the Bay Area. And then I have another younger brother with the same mom and different dads. And I actually moved to Montana with him and my mom and his dad.
So you guys go to Montana. Is there other family there? Because it sounds like you have some family in California and you kind of go back and forth throughout your life. But was Montana like the fresh start for them?
No, well, my mom's side of the family goes pretty far back, being Montanans. So there was that connection there. And then my mom's mom, my grandmother, had just retired and bought a home in Oregon. And my great grandmother left the house to my grandmother in Missoula. And so my grandmother forwarded that over to my mom. And so my mom took that and got out of the Bay Area while she could and took us up there. Hopefully that makes sense. I know there's a lot of moms going on in that conversation.
Lots of moms, lots of brothers with different parents. And so when you live in a family unit of like mom, stepdad, and half brother, and like the half brother is blood to mom and stepdad, does that mean you're any less of a kid, or did you feel anything like that growing up, or was that never a part of it?
No, I felt like the love was even across the board. I've never felt like I was the evil stepchild or anything like that. I actually didn't even really realize that he wasn't my father until I was older, and I was able to kind of comprehend that whole thing, like divorce and all that stuff. So he was around at a pretty young age. So I kind of I did view him as a father figure for sure.
And was it rich, poor, or average for you growing up?
It was average, maybe sometimes a little on the poor side.
I mean, but not
It
like
was tough.
welfare and food stamps poor, or did you ever have that?
Yeah, we went to the food bank. We relied heavily on filling the freezer, hunting. Yeah, it was tough sometimes, but my mom did a really awesome job of, holding it down and making sure, we had what we needed to get through the day.
So life wasn't easy for you as a kid. I mean, thinking of that, is there a stigma or anything that goes along with that where you don't feel as good about yourself because you have to get help?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, definitely, like, I remember we didn't have the nicest cars, so I would always go to school really early so people wouldn't see me getting dropped off in a crappy old car. Also my mom hunted, which was like something that most kids, their dads would do. It wasn't as common for the mom to go hunt. So that was kind of embarrassing for me at the time as well. Kind of stuck with me a little bit.
I mean,
But
did your mom have to do all those traditional male gendered roles for you, like teaching you how to hunt and teaching you how to shoot a bow and shoot a gun and all that shit?
she definitely taught me a lot. Yeah, she taught me a lot about using a gun and using it as a tool. And hunting was always a big thing. My brother's dad was big into that. Our neighbors were big into that. My neighbor was kind of like a father figure to me as well. He taught me a lot, especially later on when my brother's dad wasn't there and it was just my mom. I definitely kind of leaned on him. And, he taught me a lot about cars and hunting and just manly things, I guess.
And while I'm sure your childhood wasn't all bad, it seems like with that stepdad, there was stability and a male role model in the house, and you got to do a bunch of different things with him. But in watching your movie, you talk about child abuse, and it sounds like it was a physical type thing. And was it a case of this guy would get drunk and get angry and hit? Or what did you have to endure as a kid?
Oh man, yeah, this is a tough one, you know.
I'm sorry to ask about it, but it's definitely what shapes you, right? Like a big part of it?
Yeah, you know, by no means was my brother's dad drunk or anything like that. You know, he just could get angry sometimes. And as a kid, you know, I kind of felt like, oh, you know, I kind of was a little shit and maybe I had it coming. But getting physical is never really the solution. And I would get mad too, you know, and I remember things not being super great for my little brother and seeing him kind of going through stuff and it would make me angry. And yeah, I don't know. It's a tough thing to talk about, to be honest. Like this video that's going to come out, I had my reservations about even releasing it because I haven't really gotten deep into this subject, even with my mom and my brother. You know, I know there's a lot there that needs to be unpacked, and it's a tough subject to really dive into because I don't even really know how to get into it myself and like with my mom and my dad. But no, it wasn't like he was an alcoholic or anything. You know, he was a good dude in a lot of ways. You know, he supported a lot of things I did. He'd shuttle me up and down the mountain when he could for snowboarding and, you know, would do a lot of great things for skating, bring me back when McDonald's had 2 cheeseburgers for $1, he'd bring me a bag of cheeseburgers to the skate park. Like there was a lot of love there for sure, but he had a mean side to him, you know, he'd get angry and he was a big dude and yeah, it was not always the greatest time, you know, and I think that's why I ended up going to the skate park a lot because I didn't always like what was going on at home.
Yeah, I was going to say the biggest thing that probably happens in your life is like, I think it's 1987, like the Coca-Cola YMCA in Missoula opens up. And that has to be a game changer. Were you already skateboarding, BMXing, or blading, or doing anything at that point? Or were you just kind of existing?
I was riding my bike around all the time, you know, there were some dirt trails by my house. So I was going out there anytime I could. And a couple of guys had rollerblades and we're playing hockey. And I remember like swapping off and on with the skates to get in and play hockey and skateboarding, not as much. You know, I snowboarded in the winter, but no one really had a skateboard around that I remembered. Like I grew up on a dirt road. They didn't even pave the road I grew up on until I was going into high school. So it was mostly just riding my bike and, you know, hitting trails and getting up in the mountains and stuff like that.
So then the skate park opens up, and at this time, it's like 1997. Inline is the biggest thing in the world. Is that why you gravitated towards inline, or was it because of hockey, or what gives?
Yeah, you know, I remember going to the skate park and I remember there was a pretty big crew of rollerbladers there. And I just remember, you know, the skating was really cool, but like the way they kind of interacted as a group, like that camaraderie, that just like kind of hit me, you know, like I was like, man, like I want that.
That whole community, like that place became your family, and you could escape home and get there, and you knew you were like safe with your crew, and you didn't have to not be yourself.
Yeah, that sense of community. And it took me a while. I was always just watching the older guys, you know, being a younger guy and a little intimidated. But, you know, I just remember kind of watching from the outside in and just thinking, yeah, it was just fun and loose and playful. And there was a certain freedom to it. And they'd mess with each other. And I didn't really have that in my life at the time. And it was something that I knew I wanted when I saw it at the skate park. And they all happened to be rollerblading. So I think yeah, I got into rollerblading and I remember going to the skate park eventually with everything. I'd ride my bike there with a skateboard and rollerblades when I finally found a skateboard and I would kind of just do whatever. They didn't allow bikes. They only allowed rollerblades and skateboards, but eventually it was just the rollerblades that stuck out to me and the crew that was already there, you know, so that was huge.
So at this point in life, you've got that crew in Missoula, but then you're also traveling back and forth to the Bay. I think you're seeing family there. And do you bring your skates to the Bay? And is that what you use to make friends? Like it's not only something that you found community in, but it's like your self-confidence builder and your friend finder and everything all built into one?
Yeah. So like my first pair of skates I actually got in the Bay. My grandfather on my mom's side bought me a pair of K2 backyards.
Okay.
And the first skate park I went to down here was it's in San Leandro. It's like the Thrasher skate park. And yeah, I got those here. And then like pretty much from then on out, whenever I would come down to the Bay Area, I would always bring my skates. But it wasn't until later that a buddy of mine who grew up in Montana eventually moved to California, to Lodi, California. And he was skating in Missoula at the time, and he moved down here and he connected with a bunch of guys. And then I went to go visit him and brought my skates. And that's when it really kind of opened up, in a sense of like meeting all these different people from Sacramento to San Francisco. Just like he had been skating and kind of got in with the crew. And it was just pretty amazing how there were all these crews kind of spread out from, like I said, the Bay Area up to Sacramento, and they all just kind of knew each other and vibed. And eventually I just kind of like circulated through all those different crews, all the trips I took, and just got to know everybody well.
And when you say the crews, I mean, is this when you meet like the Erick Garcias, Cal McKenzie's, Brandon Smiths of the world?
Yeah, there used to be a Friday night skate in Barcadero in San Francisco, and I remember seeing Garcia and Kel and B Smith and a lot of those guys at that Friday night skate. But for me, just being a kid from Montana and, seeing these dudes in magazines and in videos, like I was pretty starstruck. So I kind of just stayed off to the side and watched and kind of stuck with my crew. I was definitely a little intimidating and definitely shy as well. And again, those guys were like that same sense of community and camaraderie, just like on a crazy level, because they were like in the mix of skating, just doing it all, traveling, touring in videos and magazines. Like it was pretty awesome to see those guys.
And so you've got those guys. Was the Bomb Squad around then too when you came around?
Yeah, like I remember those guys being around. Like I think I saw Pat one time, Pat Lennon at Friday Night Skate, and BJ. And I didn't see them as much. At least in my travels, they were fairly elusive. They were huge, like the way Pat Lennon and Brian Shima and those guys skated stuff, especially San Francisco, was just insane. It was like another level of skating.
When you think of your skating today, because I talk to a lot of people about you, and the first thing everybody says is hammers. And I've watched a shit ton of your edits, and given they're all hammers to me for sure. But when you think back, because I said to a few people, I'm like, yeah, they're hammers, but they're almost like mini hammers. If you look back to what the Bomb Squad or Broskow was doing in 2002 or something like that, where your shit's 8 feet and their shit was 10 feet. Well, I'm not trying to insult you or anything like that. Were hammers different back in that day?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think skating's just evolved so much. Like back then, it was just kind of like wild style and, just that huck it mentality. And people would land and kind of drag their hand on the landing. It didn't matter. That's a clip.
Yeah.
Now I think there's a lot more style and creativity and trying to do it as best you can. I think that's more of a thing, trying to make it just look perfect if you can. Whereas back in the day, it was just like, if you laced it, you laced it. And I think that kind of went hand in hand with the big hammers, back in like the leap of faith days, like people were just hucking it on insane levels. And I think now it's just different because there's a certain level of like technicality and creativity that's kind of been blended into the quote unquote hammer style of skating.
And I will say, everything you do, you stomp the living shit out of. Where you see it before, there are all those bobbles and everything else where you're making sure that you're getting it perfect. I'm sure you're doing it many times where some of those hammers back in the day were like, we've got one try on this or I'm going to break myself. Where yours is more controlled and really thought out, it seems like. But at this point, you are skating in the Bay Area and there's a session where there's a Daily Bread photographer there. How did you end up getting into the magazine and how crazy was that for you as like a 16 or 17-year-old?
Oh man, that was wild. I was 15 or 16 years old. I was down in the Bay Area for the summer and I was staying with some buddies in the East Bay. And we took a trip down to San Luis Obispo. There were some guys going to school down there and they had like an apartment and there was like a crew of skaters down there. And I just tagged along, went down, and there was a guy, Mike Rafinha, who was shooting a lot of photos for Daily Bread and B-Mag at the time. He was one of the main photographers in the industry. And we just spent a couple days skating and I just kind of cracked this code in my head where I figured out how to like do big rails. Like the fear just like went away and I was like, I get it. Like something just clicked. And I kind of also at that same time started to not be so intimidated to skate with people that were way better than me rather than just kind of sit on the side and watch and then later think like, oh man, I should have tried. I started to like apply myself more and take advantage of situations when there were people filming or just having the older guys there. And yeah, there was a drop rail. It was like a down flat to drop. And I just kind of looked at it. I was like, I think I could do it. And I went up and I just gave it a go. And I think I laced it like second try. And when I landed, Mike Graffini, the photographer, I didn't even realize he was taking a photo at the time. He just said, that's the next coming up. Coming up was a part in Daily Bread that featured the kind of up and coming younger guys or amateurs.
It was a big deal in the most important magazine.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was, a major publication in skating. And yeah, I had no idea. To be honest, like back then, I was just kind of skating and trying because when we went back to the apartment at night, I just wanted to be able to kind of like hold my head up around these older dudes that I admired and just kind of feel like, that I tried.
Who were the guys that were skating with you then? Like, are there some names that we know?
Casey Bagazi was there.
Like a legend in NorCal for sure.
Absolutely. I want to say Sean Keane was there, who's another guy who was my age, who was ripping, but kind of grew up with that Sacramento crew. And
some heavy hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys that I looked up to and inspired by. And to be able to do it in front of those guys while they were there and have Mike there, that was probably one of the more memorable experiences in skating for me.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Liquid Force. And not only are they back supporting the podcast, but this summer, they're bringing back the most important party and event in wakeboarding. That's right, Brostock is back, and the contest features the best riders in the world, and the event is so much more than that. But that's not all Liquid Force is up to this summer. You know what's more fun than watching the pros ride? Riding with them. And you can ride with the Liquid Force pros like Daniel Grant, Claudia Pagini, and Gunther Oka at a local lake or cable park near you at their Ride with the Pro Tour. And while Liquid Force is doing all these great things to build community on the water, they're also on the forefront of product innovation. And if you're a foil frother, you're going to want to check out the new FuseLock foil system. Wake surfers are going to love the all-new Ace and Synchro offerings. And the 2025 line features fresh boards, rad graphics, and more comp vest colorways than ever before. Park to boat to foil, Liquid Force has gear for every rider type, whether it's boat, cable, foil, or surf. To find out more about the events and the products, head on over to liquidforce.com. And when you see something you like, put it in your cart, and when you check out, enter the code POWELL15, that's all caps with no spaces, and you will save 15% off your order. Liquid Force, feel the pull. Next up, it's Elan Skis. And Elan doesn't need to support this podcast in the summertime. I've said that every summer. But they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. But if you haven't noticed, while they've always been big in Europe, Elan has built a growing cult following here in the States. It all started with the still thriving ripstick revolution that made skiing easier and more fun for anyone that tried them. That same idea, easier and more fun, is what they delivered to their Playmaker series of twin tips. How does Elan deliver a better ski experience? Well, it's all about using the best materials known to man. And that's no joke. This is the same Elan that's known for building award-winning luxury yachts. So they never cut corners. And the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Seriously, if you pick one up and you look at the edges and you see those seams of glue on all the different skis, look at Elan's and you're going to see a seamless pairing because they do take that additional time to pay that attention to detail, and it's awesome. And it makes everyone feel like they're making pro-level turns. And that's what skiing is all about, that feeling. So remember, before you buy your next pair of skis, demo a pair of Elan's. Or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick a pair, and elevate your skiing experience. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, managing my family, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. That's where Best Day comes in. These days, if I'm not partying, I'm still having beers, and those beers are from the award-winning Best Day Brewery. And there are a lot of NA beers out there right now, but none taste as good as Best Day. I love the hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, and everyone seems to like the Electro Lime Cerveza. I could go on and on as they have so many flavors, and I love them all. The beauty of Best Day is that they average about 60 calories and they won't get you in trouble. And pro tip, if you're partying, try to mix in a best day for every alcoholic beverage you have, and it will extend your night. It does it for me, and it keeps me from doing anything stupid. To have your best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com. If you make that order over $50, we'll also throw in free shipping. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. When you're back in Missoula, that thing comes out. Do you show people, and do people actually care that you're a rollerblader? Or is it something where you have like a double life and people don't even know?
I was pretty quiet about it for the most part. Like I kind of just like did my thing, but I remember that I had convinced the librarian to get subscription to Daily Bread magazine at the high school I went to. Yeah, because I couldn't afford one at home. It just wasn't going to happen. So I would always like see the newest issue in the library. And I remember a buddy of mine, we were pretty close friends, so he knew I skated. He was like, "Yo, dude, you're in Daily Bread. Have you seen it?" I was like, "No way." And so I remember like I was just dying to get out of this class, and I ran over there in between classes to check it out, and just was like, "Oh my gosh," like I can't believe I fucking did it, like I'm in this magazine. And then, word kind of got around, and I think kind of people maybe understood me a little more. High school was like, I always enjoyed sports, but when I got to high school, like a lot of people, like things shifted for me, and my interests weren't the same, and people and friends kind of grow apart. And the guys I skated with went to another school on the other side of town. They were a couple of years older than me, and there was only a dude that was my age, but he went to a school on the other side of town as well. So I was kind of on my own where I went to school, as far as skating goes, and being able to share that with like friends on a regular basis.
Did you fit into any groups, or were you just kind of a loner who had a secret life?
So back then, like I went to Big Sky High School, and back then, I don't know what the term is now, but they would say it's like mostly Hicks and natives that went to that school. So like I kind of mixed with both. I grew up with both native kids and country kids, and I got along with everybody, but I wasn't super into going to the football games as much, and kind of just was doing my own thing. In the winter, I would just want to snowboard a lot. I had a couple of buddies that I shared that with, and then when skating was going on, I just kind of kept to myself in that sense, and would connect with the guys that didn't go to my school. But yeah, that's kind of more or less what it was like, just mainly on my own, I guess, to an extent, as far as skating went.
And then when you think about your plan for after high school, is it like I'm going to do everything and try to become a pro skater? Is it I'm going to get a job? Is it I'm going to go to college? What was in the cards for you?
Oh man, that was a tough one because I didn't really have the luxury of just going to school and having my mom take care of it. So like I didn't really know who I was, let alone what I wanted to be. So I kind of had a hard time
Wanting
deciding
to pay for school?
Yeah, like, taking a loan out and investing in something, and just, like I didn't know what I wanted. And I moved down to the Bay Area right after school and kind of skated. And I don't know, skating wasn't the main thing. I just liked to skate, and I had a lot of good friends down here, but I still think I was kind of figuring myself out. And I was like skating and filming, but like at this time, like skating and filming for a video didn't even really register. Like Yvonne Nares and Vinny Mitten and Victor Arias, all those guys were the guys that I would hang out with the most. And there was a series of movies called Hyphy, the Hyphy movies.
Yeah.
And well, I remember Yvonne would always have his camera, he was always filming stuff. And again, back then it was just like, I feel like now with like social media, people are so focused on like getting clips and having something to share for everybody. Whereas like back then it was like, you would film when the getting was good, when people were around who were making stuff, but it didn't even really register. I just loved to skate, and I like to push myself. And it was like a sense of self-accomplishment and kind of a sense of pride for myself to be able to go out and feel good about what I did that day. And, hopefully share that experience with like-minded people. And anyway, Vaughn was just kind of like always had his camera, and it never really registered until finally I decided to move back to Montana after about a year down here. And Yvonne was like, "Oh, dude, you got to stay for the premiere." I was like, "Premiere?" And he had just finished filming and editing Hyphy 1. And I had like a little mini part in there, like right before Brandon Smith's thing. It didn't even click.
So that's the whole thing's a surprise. Your first video part is like a total shocker to you.
Yeah, it was like a little small part, but
A big movie. I mean, we're talking Vinnie Minton, like the style that guy just oozes style. And I never got to watch him skate a lot, but every time I saw him skate, I was like, oh my God, like they don't make many like him.
no, Vinny was one of a kind, like probably one of the greatest all around skaters of all time. Like,
Yeah.
style, technicality, like he could do it all. So yeah, just being around those guys. And there were a couple other things that happened too, connecting with the guys in Sacramento. And yeah, it just all kind of like came together in ways that it just kind of wasn't on my radar, like filming and making a movie. And then all of a sudden they were coming out. I was in these movies, and then I got back to Montana, and then it kind of clicked. But then I was like, oh, well, I'm back home now. So I don't know what I'm going to do, because Montana definitely didn't have people creating stuff like that at the time.
No, but it always seemed like that you've always been really good at, and this probably starts maybe 2008-ish, I don't even know, but you've been a master of creating content and putting it out there, from filming that you didn't even know was going to happen, that happened. But it seems like consistently for the past 20 years, you've been on the forefront of getting video content out there. I mean, has that always been calculated? Just showing people what you've been able to do, and all of a sudden it's not all of a sudden, but over 20 years it's blown up?
Yeah, whenever there was an opportunity for me to apply myself and get myself out there, I would take it, because there wasn't people filming and creating stuff in Missoula for a few years. Throughout the last 20 years, there's people who've come and gone and created stuff and definitely helped me create and put stuff out. But a lot of the times, like whenever there was someone in town or anytime I went on a trip, I just gave it my all, because it's like, I don't know when I'm going to have another chance to film with somebody, So I figured I just wouldn't take it for granted and give it my all. And my buddy Brian Sorg lived in Bozeman, which is about 3 hours east. So I would connect with him and make like little edits on like a Friday through Sunday weekend, like we'd meet somewhere like Helena or Butte and somewhere in between and create. But yeah, I think just the drive to create came from not having it. And when it was there, I just gave it all I got, gave it everything.
And then when did things start happening for you? Because I would think between segments coming out, the clips going online that people are seeing, I mean, is Valo the first brand that comes out and hooks you up with product?
Yeah, Valo was the one. It was kind of funny. Like, I don't know if you've heard of like Shred to Your Dead, the videos.
Yeah.
So my buddy Victor gave me a call and was like, hey, we're going to be in Idaho at the beginning of next week or something like that. You should come out. We're camping and skating. And I was like, cool. And then Erick Bailey hit me up as well, like a day or two later, and was like, God, dude, come on down to Idaho. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll come down and hang out. And this is, again, like I didn't have like Instagram or like social media. And it's like you weren't aware of what everyone was doing. It wasn't just being broadcast all the time. So I just figured, oh, they're coming to camp. And then when I showed up, I went down there with a couple buddies who had moved to Missoula. Josh Hayes and Brandon Mateer had moved to Missoula, and Brandon Mateer is like kind of OG from the
AFC guy, right?
Yeah, totally. He had moved to Missoula, and Josh Hayes was a ripper from Denver, or actually originally Chattanooga, Tennessee, but he moved to Missoula to go to the Rocky Mountain School of Photography. And so anyway, I jumped in the car, headed down to, I think, Sun Valley, and I got down there, and it was more than just Bales and Victor and Yvonne. It was like Jeff Stockwell, Chris Haffey, Tori Tressiter, Julio, Ross Kuhn, like some of the best doing it of all time, and especially at that time. So I was kind of like, oh, this is a little more than just some camping and skating. This is like full on the heaviest rippers in the game.
Yeah.
That's like a surprise. But then again, I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm trying to rip, I'm trying to skate. And I had a great time and connected with everybody and ended up going back home. And a couple weeks later, I remember Victor hit me up and was like, yo, dude, like, check your email. And I was like, email? What? Yeah, like, check my email. And so I checked my email, and John Julio had reached out to me and basically was like, hey, man, really enjoyed hanging with you. You were ripping. I was talking to the guys, and how would you feel about being part of Valo? And I was like, whoa, like, no way. So yeah, I definitely accepted, and he sent me some skates. And my roommate at the time was Justin Barr, a good friend of mine. He's always loved skating, and he used to film a lot more back in the day. And I remember him just telling me like, man, this is really awesome. This is huge for you. Coming from Montana, not a lot of people, for me, it was always like there was the West Coast and the East Coast. And not a lot going on in between as far as skating went. And so it felt kind of surreal to be just this Montana kid who got picked up by Valo, which at the time was like the brand in skating.
It was the brand. John was the man who was making a huge difference in skating. He still is with them. And it had to be a cool thing for you to be on a brand that came out of one of your cities that pretty much every one of your friends, I feel like, for the most part, except for like Erick Garcia and people like that who were diehard K2s for a long time until they weren't getting any more and then they went to Valo. But was it pretty much like you were part of that amateur gang of skaters that helped build that brand?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was incredible. You felt like you were a part of something. John would hit me up. He's like, hey, can I get a profile, like a picture and some skating pictures? And like, you were on the website. It was this whole thing, they had like pro and am, and it was cool. And he would reach out and want clips, and they would do like a maneuver Monday featuring various Valo riders from all over the world. And obviously I was hyped to create something, to film something, which I did with my roommate, Justin, at the time. And yeah, it was really cool. And then eventually it kind of started to change in a sense of like different people got involved, and it felt kind of like, if you weren't tight with some of the folks, maybe you weren't as included. And I don't think that was by design or any ill will. I just think that's how it happens. And John kind of put a little more faith in some of the other guys, creating the image of the brand, if I guess would be the way to describe it. And being in Montana, like I got it. Like I wasn't in LA or New York. Like I just kind of felt a little on the outside.
Is that why you moved to San Francisco in like 2014 to just be near the brand and hopefully kind of have some growth within Valo?
So no, I quit riding for Valo before I moved down to San Francisco, and I joined Tom and Rollerblade before I came down here.
Okay,
and,
I thought for some reason it happened after, but okay, so you rode for Valo. When Tom calls you out of the blue and says he loves your skating, is it like flattering and you have to think about it? Or is it like, all right, I'm going to sign with you, man, because I can see a future with Rollerblade and I'm kind of just going to get lost in, because I mean, Valo had so many great people. And at that point, you weren't going to be rising to the top of like their A team right there.
No. And I think that's what I realized is like, okay, unless you're like Alex Brosco or like David Sizemore, like there's not a lot that seems like it's going to be happening outside of like getting hooked up with product and maybe like a little trip here or two. But
dinner here or there at wherever you get yourself to.
Yeah. And, John's such a great dude and he supported me and I'm forever grateful. At the time, I think I could have gone one of two ways. I could have gotten more into skating, or I could have just kind of done what a lot of kids from Western Montana do and just kind of like knuckled down and worked and kind of went in that other direction, which is also a very respectable direction. But John, I credit him for kind of giving me a spark to really get into skating, like kind of making a kid from Montana feel like he was part of something. And I will say it was tough to leave Valo, kind of telling your childhood hero that you don't want to be on a skate team anymore. Wasn't super easy. But yeah, anyway, Tom had reached out to me. I put out an edit and he was just like, hey, love your skating. And at the time I was just like, whoa, Tom Hyser, this is pretty awesome. Like I was flattered, but I didn't really think anything about like being part of Rollerblade or anything like that. And I think he even mentioned like, hey, I know you're with Valo, but if you ever want to try the skates, just let me know. And I think I dropped another edit down the line. And he was always just commenting or DMing me and just letting me know how hyped he was on my skating. And it wasn't until I was on a tour in Oregon, like the Northwest Shred Tour, and Sean Keane, who was on Rollerblade, who also used to be on Valo. He was kind of one of the original guys on Valo and then transitioned over to Rollerblade. He was on that tour and we were just kind of talking. And I just remember him laying it out, like what it was like being on Rollerblade. And I knew I was never going to get like rich and have some crazy income where I'd be making a living off skating. But I always was like, if I could get anything out of skating, I would love to travel. And Rollerblade was doing that. And they were sending Sean all over and he was getting to do cool stuff. Like he was like, I think right at the time he had just finished working with like the Discovery Channel.
Oh shit. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. They had like a truck go by. He was doing like a moving wall ride to see if it's possible or whatever. But anyway, I just got to thinking about it. And then I remember on the way home from Oregon, I just was like, like I think I should take a chance and do this rollerblade thing because it's kind of like now or never. So I went for it, and it was kind of crazy how it unfolded. Not to ramble on, but like, well, I was working on a weed farm. I was working on a weed farm in the fall before, it was all crazy recreational in California. And every fall I'd go down there and work for harvest. And I was on this farm and I had no service, and I was trying to get a hold of John to quit Valo. And I had to go down about a mile and a half down this dirt road and get a signal to try and call him. For like 3 days, I was trying to call him. And I would go down and I would get text messages from him. And he'd be like, hey, man, everything cool? I keep seeing you're trying to call me and I can't get back to you. I'm in Germany. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, yeah, man, everything's fine. I just would really like to talk to you on the phone if you got a minute. I felt like in my mind, I owed him at least that.
Yeah, that's like a man thing to do.
I mean, he gave me everything I needed to go out and skate on a daily basis. Like, at least I could do is a freaking phone call. So finally I set up a time, go down the dirt road, tell him like, hey, I'm going to join Rollerblade. And then I worked a couple more weeks on that farm. I went down to San Francisco, and Tom was like, hey man, come down to LA. The blading cup's going on. I was like, okay. And then he was just like, you want me to get you a flight? And in my mind, I was just so used to just kind of getting around however I got around, kind of like free style, nomadic style. And I was like, no, I'll figure a way down there. It just didn't even dawn on me. I was like, oh, you're already part of this team. And, he's offering travel and you're so not used to having it. I just kind of was like, no, it's cool. I'll find a way. And I ended up getting down there and just hitching a ride with a buddy. But yeah, right when I got down there and they were filming with Lonnie Gallegos, they had the whole team there. They had this big old Airbnb. It was just like instantly just like a different vibe. And I was like, okay, cool. This is pretty rad.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start things out with Outdoor Research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build their products to perform in the wet and soggy cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class. While OR has always been known for building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, skiers, and snowboarders, they've gone all in on an award-winning bike line that FreeHub describes as Outdoor Research has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional but also stylish and durable. That meticulous design and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. So high praise, and Outdoor Research is doing a lot of things on the athlete side. While they launched with an incredible team, they had the Van Steenbergen brothers, Georgia Astley. This year, they've added Casey Brown, Carson Storch, and others. And between the athletes and the events they support, while OR might be new to the bike world, they've always lived it, and there's not many brands doing what OR is doing in the world of bike. To see the new products and what the hype is all about, head on over to OutdoorResearch.com. My final sponsor is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. Think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone at Stanley. And between the unique colors and the collaborations that Stanley's doing, there really is something for everyone in the Stanley line. And they're not going to gouge you with crazy prices. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you and me with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my code. To use it, head on over to Stanley1913.com, go shopping, and buy a ton of stuff because, like I said, this code is 30% off. It's the best deal that Stanley offers. And when you check out, enter the code capital P-O-W-E-L-L. That's Powell 2025. So no spaces in between that. Capital P-O-W-E-L-L 2025. That's where you get your code. Thank you very much for the support, Stanley. They make the best gear in the world. You've seen them everywhere. And if you don't have one, you definitely need one. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. You're not sharing a bed and not a room with 12 people. It's like you can finally live normal.
Yeah, I had that rollerblade dollar supporting me on the road. But you know what? Sleeping on the floors all those years, like with Valo and even the years before, those were some of the greatest times. You really got to know folks. But yeah, it was definitely a different scale just having, rollerblade being the one supporting your skating. And yeah, it just hit me. I was like, damn, all right, this is what it is. And then That was in November. And then that spring, I had gotten out of a long-term relationship and felt like I needed a change. And my other younger brother was living in San Francisco and was like, dude, if you want to come crash, like come crash. And I had some travels in mind through Tom and Rollerblade. So I just went down to San Francisco and was like, you know what, fuck it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right now. And San Francisco sounds like the place to do it, you know, with all the people down there to help me along my journey, my skating journey.
And you've been with Rollerblade for a decade, but you've been skating for like 30 years. And I mean, you skated through the Diversity Tour days, NIST, the ASA, the late 90s. You skated when Farmer was wearing sweatpants, when Brosco was rocking flappy TRSs, and the tight jean days. You've skated through every different thing. And like, you didn't get to be pro until you were like 25 years old. You were stuck in an AM world, which was crazy. But all your peers and everybody, they've all left for the, I mean, I think Farmer's still around. And maybe there's a couple other dudes around, but you've been in this thing for 30 years. And for the past 11, that's when your pro career started. Is it crazy that you're still here and all those people that you looked up to and were your peers are gone?
It's a pretty wild thing for sure. And, you know, I was kind of thinking about this the other week in a sense of like, I kind of really didn't get my shot, my proper shot until I like moved down here. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like when I was at Montana, I was definitely applying myself, but being down here around some of the best videographers and photographers in the game was huge. And, you know, a lot of those guys had the right people around them to help get them out there. And for once, like I had that, you know? And so in the last 10 years, I felt like I really kind of pushed it even harder at a later stage, at a stage that I probably should have been pushing it when I was like 16, 17, back when I got that Daily Bread issue. You know, I wish I was in the position to continue to push it from there. But, you know, every time I would go back to Montana, it was just kind of like a sobering experience. You know, I'd just be like, damn, well, I'm back. And, you know, winter would come. I wouldn't skate from like November to damn near April, you know. I just didn't really have those tools around me and those people around me to help take my skating to the next level. And when I got here, it just clicked, man. And I was like all about it.
Yeah, I was talking to a few guys and they said that you were always part of the crew. But once you got there, it was like you weren't just part of the crew, you became the best part of the crew. And everybody was like, holy shit, they didn't realize how great you were until you lived there and they got to see you skate every day.
Yeah, you know, I always knew I could push it. I knew I had it in me. I just needed the right people around me and the right circumstances. And coming down here, I just kind of had no plan. I was just like, took my brother up on some floor space. And, you know, I had this new sponsor with Rollerblade and Tom Hyser backing it. And I just knew, like, if you're going to do this, man, like, do it now. And, you know, I felt like I owed it to myself to at least give it a solid go. And that's what I did.
Have you been able to travel the world?
I have. Yeah. I've been able to travel the world and create amazing memories and experiences and meet some really awesome people. And Rollerblade and Tom have been so accommodating. You know, it's been up and down, you know. Yeah, it hasn't been perfect, but I held on and I always trusted Tom to kind of fight for what was best. And yeah, I'm so grateful for it all. Like, I wouldn't change a thing. In a way, I'm almost glad it happened when I was a little older because I have a different level of appreciation for it, especially coming from Montana where this doesn't happen to kids from Montana.
Well, it's like you've grown with skating where there was never ever any dumb, stupid mistakes that really screwed you up as a youngster or as a youth. You were able to always grow with the sport and keep it as a passion. And then it just everything lined up where you could make a pro career out of it. And you've made a pro career that not too many people are going to have because you're getting one of these things this week that no one really gets in the world of rollerblading, or we should call it inline skating because that's what Tom wants me to call it, I'm sure. But you're getting your pro skate this week. How did you find out that they were going to give you a pro skate? And is it like one of those things where it's still hard to believe?
Oh, man. You know, I was talking to Rob G and I was like, you know, this is probably one of the wilder pro skates like stories, you know, just the way it all happened. But yeah, first of all, I am blown away. There's definitely been levels to it. You know, talking to Sven, I was in Spain with him a couple months ago and he was telling me, you know, only 8 people have ever got a pro skate with rollerblade in the 40 plus years they've been around.
Can you name them? Is it Sven? Is it Chris Edwards?
Yep.
Rob G?
Yep.
Yourself?
Uh-huh.
Broscow?
Yep.
That's 5. Let's think of who else would have had a pro. Ty Chris didn't get one, did he?
Nope.
Fabiola?
No, she should have, but she didn't get one.
Yeah, that's just a slap in the face to like their greatest skater ever.
Yeah, that's 5. Wait, so you got Frankie Morales.
Oh, Frankie. Yep, I should have thought of that.
Frankie. Sven had one. Man, Tori Tresseder had one.
Whoa. How did he get a pro skate? You know what? Who cares? He got a pro skate. He was really good friends with Ezekwe.
Yeah, Tori's such a great guy. Just all around, just
amazing dude,
awesome.
Amazing skater, great style. One of the 8 people in the world that deserve a rollerblade pro skate. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely am hyped that Tori's on that list. You know, Tori's just awesome human being. Yeah, rad dude.
Heat wheels.
Yeah, Heat Wheels. Yeah, gosh, Tori's legendary, man. Just amazing human. But yeah, I kind of blown away. It's been a hell of a ride. It actually kind of came about 2 years ago. They did a new mold for this current boot that they're set for the blank boot. And after Sean Keen Sean Keen, he was the other one that had the pro skate. Because I think you mentioned Sven.
Yeah, I did say Sven, yeah.
Yeah, so 8 would have been Sean Keen. So Sean had his skate. After Sean got his, they said, okay, we're going to do a team skate. Then Tom came to me one day and was like, hey, we're going to give you a skate. So I started mocking up different kind of colorways with Kyle Sola. And we figured out one that we liked. And then I knew right away, I was like, I want to go home and film this back in Montana. And I knew I wanted to film it with Jeremy Raff, who's a pretty awesome videographer and a good friend of mine. And I'd never just made something one-on-one with him. And I always wanted to. So it was kind of crazy. Like I fly home and, Tom was like, man, I don't know. Like we're trying to push this sample out. I don't know if we're going to get it in time. So I remember he was like, just take your skates with you, which were the team skates at the time. He's like, worst case, we'll just film like something of you in Montana if your skate doesn't get there. And so I got there a few days before Jeremy Raff. Skates still weren't there. Jeremy hits me up, say, yeah, I'll be in tomorrow. Skates got there the day before Jeremy came in, like was so hyped that they came. And then Jeremy's like, oh, dude, if you can, don't open that box. He's like, wait for me. I have an idea. I was like, shit, I just want to look at the skate so bad. But anyway, I wait for him. And then he had the idea to create the video that I think Tom shared with you, like the mini doc.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It came out really great.
Yeah, and Raph's just such a great storyteller with the way he edits and films. And I knew he had some kind of idea. I didn't realize that it was fully that, I guess, like beforehand. And then he was like, yeah, dude, I just want to interview you and your mom and film you checking out your skate for the first time with your mom, and had all these ideas. And it kind of just unfolded the way it did, even the good and the bad parts in the interview. Like I was just speaking honestly of my experiences and why things were what they were to me. And anyway, so we get that. We filmed the whole thing, I think in 5 days, maybe less. And it was like brutal 100+ degree weather every day skating. And I remember going back being like, damn, how did I skate here for so long? It's so hard to skate here. It's just so rough and gritty. But anyway, we filmed that. We come back, that was in the summer. Tom, I think at the time it was like, hey, like the goal is to get this out like spring of next year, something like that. And then it kind of just got put on the back burner. It didn't come out spring. Then it got pushed to that following year's holiday, hopefully. And then there were a bunch of changes within the company and it kind of got put back on the back burner. Sales were low. They had the big spike that was COVID. And then they were kind of on the down slope of that. Sales weren't as crazy as they were. And they were kind of just readjusting and trying to reformulate their game plan, and an aggressive pro skate just wasn't in the mix. So it got pushed off again and it kind of just kept getting delayed. And then there was a time this last year, I thought it was going to happen and it didn't. And not only did it not happen, they made some budget cuts and things were looking pretty rough. And Sean Keen ended up parting ways with Rollerblade. And that was a huge bummer because Sean, he was there before me. He was just kind of like the dude. He was Rollerblade, and so that was a big bummer for everybody involved. And so I was kind of a little disappointed in the brand too. Like I had no idea what they were trying to do, the direction they were trying to go into. Felt like my pro skate was kind of out of reach. So I just kind of was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to focus on the shit I have control over, which is just creating and doing things on my own. And this was last year. And I ended up dropping 4 parts last year.
I know, it's so crazy.
Yeah, and dude, it was funny too. Like the last one I dropped, my buddy Elijah, he just was like really good at filming long lens, which in skating there's so much fisheye. And we just started filming, and we had a couple clips. Like, dude, let's just film this whole thing long. Fuck doing what's trending or whatever. And then just rollerblading in general, I was kind of just like, like what even is skating right now? Like what are we even doing this for? And my buddy Elijah was like, dude, let's just make this one for the birds. Just toss it out for the birds. And so it's just like stuck with me, and I just called the edit for the birds. And then it was just kind of like, not a fuck you to the industry, but kind of in a way. I was just kind of like, dude, I'm just so tired of all the trends, and I was burnt out on a lot of stuff. And like I said, I made it a point to just focus on the stuff that I had control over, and just kind of do me, skate how I like to skate, wear what I want to wear. Like, it's just skating. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But there was a lot of stuff kind of buzzing around the industry that I wasn't hyped on, and I don't know. So anyway, I made that edit and ended up getting nominated for Edit of the Year. And then it catapulted me into getting nominated for Skater of the Year. And it was a pretty wild year. And it also, all that happening kind of put Rollerblade in a position of like, you either kind of do the right thing or you look kind of bad if you don't, like I think the whole industry was watching, and I was seeing tons of comments on YouTube and Instagram, people just like, where's this guy skate? And, that wasn't really my intention, but in a way, I guess I kind of was like thinking like, when I dropped that last edit, I'm like, well, if they can't do it after this one, 4 edits in a year, like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like I'm throwing them in this position. So that came out, and Tom was kind of like, there's different people in charge, and I was just like, man, are you fucking serious? Like, this is crazy. So I hit up Jeremy Rapp. I was like, dude, let's get these dudes a rough draft of this mini doc. And Rapp was like, cool. Yeah, let's do it. So from what I heard, like, they had this big meeting in Italy with a bunch of the like rollerblade guys, and Jeremy Raff gets this rough draft of the edit, sends it to Tom. Tom's just like, what the fuck? This is so good. And he's like, we got to get it to these guys. And so Raff kind of puts together a little bit more of a refined version. And he's like, Tom's like, got to get this out to these guys while they're all together. And from what I heard, like, if Jeremy didn't get that edit out, like, 30 minutes earlier or whatever, like it would have never gotten into their hands, or they wouldn't have seen it or whatever. Anyway, long story short, they get the edit to these guys. The guys are hyped. Okay, boom, let's do the pro skate. And then I was just kind of like, wow, like it's really going to happen. And then they were like, we're going to plan it around Winter Clash, which is a massive event in Eindhoven in Holland. And yeah, they did the release there. They announced it. They had like my skate at the booth, and it was crazy. I got to go to Spain afterwards and film a little promo. Then I came back to the States, and they were like, all right, like we're getting ready to drop. And then boom, there's the tariff thing. So it was like, okay, cool. So my skate drops in Europe. It's been out in Europe, but it gets delayed being out in the US. Like if we pay the tariff, it's going to be an astronomical price. And I was just like, oh man. And Tom's just like, should we pay the tariff and sell it for this, or should we wait? And I was like, man, if we can, let's wait. I want my skate to be affordable, and I don't want to remember it as being connected to this wild situation. And so, yeah, we waited and waited, and finally, like, they pulled some customs magic or something, and we're able to get it through Canada or something crazy. And then in the end, I think they gave it like a lift on the tariffs for 90 days. But anyway, finally got the skate into the States. And now it's supposedly going to be out next week, which is nuts, man. Sorry for the long ramble, but it was a lot going into just getting this kid pro skate. It's crazy.
I mean, this is the biggest thing of your career, so we can deal with the long ramble. I could easily finish this thing off with the question, like, you're 37 years old, you're getting a pro skate, which is crazy that you're that old and you're getting a pro skate. I bet you of the 8 people that ever got pro skates, no one was even close to your age. They were a lot younger. But either way, that's not how I'm going to end the show. I end all of my shows with something that I call inappropriate questions. Yeah, what I do here is I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. But this time I actually got 2 people to ask inappropriate questions because I had a miscommunication with one of them, and they came up with 3 extra inappropriate questions. So you're going to have 6 of them. So you don't have to go super long in your answers. But I was able to get a legendary guy, ESGJFF. You know who I'm talking about, Erick Garcia, legendary toe roller and cess slider and Bay Area dude. He is going to be asking you the first 3 questions, And then the second 3 questions are going to be coming from your Rollerblade, not team manager, because he's like the head of marketing over there. But he has been a longtime blader, from pro skater to developer of the Fatty to everything Rollerblade. Tom Hyser comes in. I've got a long intro of inappropriate questions here. Erick Garcia, ESG, and he's a photographer, he's a skater, he runs a skateboard company, he does all this different shit. But I used to travel with Erick, and we once spent time in Detroit. Erick, we were in Detroit. You used to tell a story, or you told it to me once, about how we woke up with some kind of pizza and you thought it was funny. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, I remember that. I was in Michigan at Airborne.
Okay, so what's the story here? We can tell a funny one about me before we get into Cameron.
All right, so now you're really making me dig deep, but I definitely vividly remember. Okay, one, we stayed at like the Roach Coaches motel that I can ever possibly remember.
Worst place I've ever stayed.
The dirtiest of dirtball places. And we, of course, we all kind of like stuffed in there. It was like probably like 6 of us in one room and the rest of the group in the other room. But I remember you were in our room and they came with microwaves. And I don't know even where you got the damn pizza from, dude, but you literally, I remember waking up to the microwave going on and smelling it, and you were just there looking dirtball as can be as well, but you know, team managers do that at some point during the tour. You literally, man, just pulled out this like sloppy melted slice of pizza, and I was like, what are you doing, dude? Why are you using that microwave? That was really what got caught my attention. I was like, I wouldn't even have touched that microwave. So you know, hands down to you, bro. I don't recall you getting sick or any type of like food poisoning. So you probably got a gut of steel.
It's pretty funny because we're talking about one of the healthiest skaters out there on the planet, Cam. And at that time, I was definitely the unhealthiest person on any tour. You were able to witness that. But let's jump into question number 1 for Cameron Talbott.
All right. So how do you feel and think about the people, homeowners or not, that yell and curse you out when you're skating and damaging up their house in San Francisco?
There you go.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I'm sure. Fuck. Well, I kind of have a little system. I mean, San Francisco is known for house skating, as a lot of people know. I stay out of certain neighborhoods. Like some of these old Victorians, they're not just one house. A lot of times they've been converted into multiple units, you know? So when it's an apartment, I don't feel as bad. But if there's someone screaming at me while I'm trying to do something, I'm definitely trying to do it. And to be honest, they say they'll call the cops. I'll just say, go for it. Because in SF, like, cops just like don't even, it's insane if they show up. So I guess that's the shithead kid in me. But I just love to skate and I'm going to get it anywhere I can. And if they're yelling at me, I'm just going to go for it. I just don't even care.
That's so funny because everybody also says that you're like the nicest dude ever. You're so thoughtful and kind, and you look like you kind of have a hippie aspect to you because of dreadlocks. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But when it comes to skating, all of that goes out the window because you need to get your clip.
Yeah, I sound like such a shithead, but yeah. But just for the record, if it looks like a pristine, crazy house, or it's a one, like most of the times you could know people are living there and own it if, you know, it's just one unit, one house. But when it's cut up into 6 different units in an old Victorian, like shit, that guy probably lives somewhere else and he's just charging high rent to these poor suckers. So fuck, you know, fuck him. I'm going to skate your rail, man. Sorry, dude.
So the Robin Hood of blading right there, taking the rail from the rich and delivering it to the poor, which are the rollerbladers. We are going to go to question number 2.
Okay.
Why do the homies and I always catch you in a squatting position? Like you're trying to take a shit. Are you really trying to summons a fat dump?
That's my resting pose. I don't know. I've always done that. I always just squat and these guys always give me shit. But like, that's just how I chill. I don't know. It just feels good on my back. Like if I just squat.
Nah, fair enough. That's just you. We're going to go with his final inappropriate question.
What's the reason for keeping your dreads as a white person in our so sensitive country we live in? I thought you quit smoking Za years ago.
All right, so this is kind of 2 parts. It's like smoking weed. Did you smoke a shit ton of weed when you were younger and quit?
I did. I stopped smoking weed when I was like 30. I just had a lot of stuff going on in my life and felt like I needed clarity. I actually was just like completely sober for a few years. And I guess at the time, I just felt like, you know, growing my facial hair out and having dreads is just like my identity in a way. Like I wasn't trying to conform to any kind of social standard, nice hair, clean face. It just kind of felt like it represented like the free kind of flowy, I guess, hippy dippy spirit I had going on, like I just wasn't trying to conform to anything. I just wanted to do me. And it just felt like that was a good representation of like how I felt at the time, just being me and letting things kind of flow for what they are. And yeah, not living up to any social standard that's been put in place.
All right. Well, we will leave that there. Now we are going to go to Tom Hyser and his inappropriate questions. Let me get to number 1 with Tom, and here we go.
All right, Cameron, what's the sketchiest job you've done besides jumping off buildings on your skates?
Well, I don't know.
I think he's alluding to you trimming weed because you did mention that before. And I mean, is that a sketchy thing, especially before it was legal? Because there was that show where it's like all these people up on some mountain with guns and like all kinds of weird shit going on. Was it a kind of place where you could disappear?
Yeah, I mean, shit, absolutely. Back then, I mean, if you got mixed in with the wrong folks, I mean, yeah, I'd work a seasonal job in Montana and then I'd come down this way to go trim up north. And yeah, I mean,
how much money would you make in a summer trimming or in a season trimming?
When I was just trimming, I'd make several $1,000s, but later on, I kind of would do like trimming and I'd kind of be like a trim boss, like keeping track of what people were trimming and bringing stuff in from the dry room and bucking it down and getting stuff all sorted out for people to trim more. But yeah, for sure. Like you got a lot of weed hanging around, like 20, 30 pounds of trim dope, just chilling in a freaking camper on the hillside, with a bunch of dudes sleeping in tents and, not a lot of, I mean, anyone could go up in there at any time. So I'd never really thought of it that way. A lot of the guys that I would be involved with were super, responsible, and I trusted them. I knew a lot of them most of my life. A lot of them were Montana kids, and hell, I know Montana kids. They probably had guns too. We just don't talk about it. Just keep it quiet. But I never really viewed that as sketchy, but I guess I could see where a lot of people think that was pretty fucking sketchy. Yeah.
All right. We will go with his next inappropriate question.
Yeah.
What is the craziest situation you've been in while trying to get a clip skating in San Francisco?
There's definitely been some. I mean, I had a dude break into my car right across the street from me, and I ended up catching him, and that sucked.
Yeah, that does suck.
Yeah, that was just a bummer that he fucking broke my window. But yeah, I mean, it's San Francisco. A lot of wild stuff happens. I think overall, though, like years and years and years ago, I was with a buddy over at the Federal Building, and we were getting kicked out by a cop. And another dude who was with us decided to just take off, just like skate off when I started asking for our names. And then I kind of like looked at him, I looked back at the cop, and he kind of looked at me like, "Are you going to go?" And I don't know why, I just decided to go too. And I got like maybe 3 or 4 strides on my skates, and I just felt these arms wrap around me from behind. And I didn't even really do anything. I just fucking kind of gave it a little shake. And dude, he like slid right off of me. I must have been like 19 years old. And he slid right off of me and went face first onto the concrete. And fucking, I just took off. And then I caught up to my other buddy who was there. There were 3 of us. The dude who took off, I caught up to him. The other guy stayed behind. And that cop ended up chasing us like in his car. And I'm not even kidding you. He got a fucking flat tire right at City Hall, and we were able to get away. It was crazy. And then I called Yvonne to come pick me up, and I was telling him the story. I don't think he really believed me. And then we're going by City Hall, and I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing? Why are you going back over there? I swear he's over here." We go by, and sure enough, there's the cop, flat tire on the car, a bunch of other cops talking to him. You could see him explaining himself. I was just like, it was pretty wild. But yeah, just in general, that's a wild city. You see all sorts of things. Like, I'm almost feel like I'm desensitized to a lot of the crazy shit I've seen over the years.
All right. Well, there's going to be one more crazy question, and then it's going to be the end of the podcast. Here we go.
What's the craziest situation you've encountered while you're out doing your bike messenger job?
So I would think that's just crazy in itself, being in crazy streets with drivers that are all over the place. I mean, how many times have you been hit?
Dude, I got doored one time really bad. Well, like to the extent I didn't even know what happened until I like looked up and I saw the lady like standing with her mouth wide open and the door open. And I was like, oh shit, I just got doored. You know, I fucking flew off my bike. My front rack saved me. If I didn't have that front rack on my bike, I would have took the side of that door probably straight to like my sternum and throat. But front rack took the brunt of it. I flew over the bars, ended up under a Penske moving truck.
Jesus.
But I was totally fine, just kind of jammed my thumb somehow. But yeah, I didn't even realize what happened. So I looked up and saw the lady like looking at me super surprised. And I think she gave me like $300 on the spot and her phone number just in case. Pretty wild. But yeah, that was my only wreck.
All right, well, we'll leave it at that. And that's the Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And your story is so interesting because it's so different than most. I mean, you come from not that much and you're in Missoula, Montana, and you end up skating for like 20 years before you get to be a real pro. But in those 20 years, it's like you master every aspect of blading and you absorb so many different styles. I mean, you can kind of see like the influence of Rob G to the Bomb Squad to the Kelsos with your footwork. There's so many different things that make up the skater that you are. And while all of those guys are not really skating on a pro level anymore, at 37 years old, you've been with Rollerblade for 11 years. You've got a pro skate coming out, one of 8 people in the history of the world to have a pro skate with Rollerblade, which is pretty incredible for a kid from Missoula, Montana, who just played a little bit of hockey and showed up at the YMCA when the skate park opened. But now you're on top of the sport, and that's a great place to be. Thank you for being so open about your story and sharing a lot, and thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike. It was great chatting with you.
So that was time with Cameron Talbott, and if you can't tell, I love the blading podcasts. While I was a snowboarder at one point, I got into this industry through inline skating, and I love everything about it. So it's great to get a guy like Cameron on who's been part of the scene since the beginning almost. What's crazy is that Cameron was skating for 20 years before he flipped the pro skater switch. The dedication that takes and the ability to stay driven through the frustration that can be part of a sponsored blading career didn't discourage Cam. And while 99% of his peers hung up their skates and talk about blading as something they did when they were younger, Cameron is still at the peak of his career at 37, so it's cool to see that in a sport where people absolutely destroy their bodies for pennies. What's even cooler is what a stand-up guy Cam is. If you blade, go out and buy his pro skate. If you don't, check out his documentary on the Rollerblade channels. It's a pretty incredible one with a dude who's got a great story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reviewing me wherever you listen. And finally, please support my incredible sponsors who make this show happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Liquid Force, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.